Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Inside the Pickle Jar. And following on the heels of the conversation I was having last week with you about pause practice and the importance of meditation and teaching your body, your brain, to pause a little bit before you react so that you don't say things that you will regret later, and becoming more emotionally intelligent around that. And today I really want to talk about a study that I ran across from the Harvard Medicine that talks a lot about interoception. And so what is interoception? It is the sensation of understanding the internal signals of the body as the body gives it to you. And so thinking about like how you see, how you hear, touch, taste, and smell, that's how we understand the world around us. And so just stay with me a little bit and I'll explain why interoception is so important, especially for those of you in the neurodivergent community that have alexithymia, which is the inability to understand or pinpoint the emotion that you're feeling. And today I really want to focus on this interoception and getting to the place where you're paying attention to your feelings and not your emotions. And so when we start recognizing interoception, we start paying attention to how our heart feels, our chest. We start paying attention to our gut. How does our gut feel? Our lungs. And then as well as maybe in your shoulders, in your neck, if you're feeling tension and recognizing that tension. And so this study is helping to provide evidence that these internal senses are a part of keeping the body in balance. And it can be implicated in other medical conditions. Think about anxiety, any kind of addiction, eating disorders, and chronic pain. And we don't really know a lot about our external senses. We almost know nothing at the molecular and cellular level about interoception. And that's coming from Stephen Librelus, who's a professor of cell biology and I believe, let me get this right, the Blavatnik Institute at HMS, or the Harvard Medical Society. And that's why Librelus and other researchers are exploring the molecular underpinnings of mind-body links and how it reshapes, or how it is reshaping our understanding of how we understand what's going on inside of us and why it matters that we do. So if you take a pause and get a sense of, can you feel your heartbeat outside of like putting your fingers on your pulse and trying to actually feel your heartbeat? Well, in the 80s, there was a German psychologist named Rainer Chaudry, and he wondered why some people are better at perceiving their bodily processes than others. So he got together a group of study participants and to count their heartbeats simply by sensing them without using their fingers to check their pulse. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, but sometimes I notice when I'm laying in bed and it's really quiet, especially if my brain is churning or I'm trying to close down and get real quiet, I can feel my heartbeat. I don't know if you do this, but I notice it, and sometimes it's nerve-wracking if it's going too fast, and increases my anxiety. But Chaudry found that participants' heart rates didn't vary much. Some of these participants counted the number of beats better than some of the other participants. And those who were better at sensing the heartbeat were better at having anxiety. So that tells you a lot about what I just told you in my story. So the heartbeat counting task just became a go-to measure of the ability known as interoceptive attention, also called interoceptive accuracy. And that's the accuracy to sense what's happening inside one's own body. And then the task was applied in later decades to the study of other psychiatric and neurological conditions. But in this case, where Chaudry linked anxiety to increased interoceptive accuracy, further studies showed that people with autism, eating disorders, or depression were worse at perceiving their heartbeats or other sensations. And so the researchers started thinking maybe there's a happy medium when it comes to interoception. You want to understand and be aware that your body is sending you these messages, but not too aware. And a number of interventions have been started to try to find that balance. And we think a lot about, I was talking last week about mindfulness practice, which is why I think this study is super fascinating. But it's all around cognitive behavioral therapy. And fortunate enough for me, the therapist I just started with understands cognitive behavioral therapy. And so some of this therapy focuses on helping patients reconnect with their bodily sensations, like mindful breathing or movement to treat anorexia or pain. Kind of like what I was talking about last week as far as being mindful and practicing your pause. So some of those that were used to treat anxiety, and that involved conditioned exposure to sensations that trigger stress. So there was a PhD named Wen Chen. She's a branch chief at the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. And that's part of the National Institute of Health, and was first exposed to the idea of interoception through these types of interventions. Given that she had this interest already in integrative health, she thought the concept was pretty interesting, but as a neurobiologist, she was noticing that a lot of the other researchers that she hung out with were mainly focused on psychological, philosophical, clinical dimensions of this interoception. And none of them were really diving into the basic science behind it. And she says, I had this moment where I thought, what actually is interoception? And so she thought of Liberalis, a grantee in her program, and she knew that Liberalis wasn't using the word interoception to describe his work, but in the mid-2010, he and colleagues characterized some of these sensory neurons called mechareceptors that sense when the stomach is stretching and send signals to the brain which cause a feeling of fullness. So they're studying about overeating and addiction and things like that. And Chen invited Liberalis to give a talk to a group of clinical researchers focused on interoceptive responses at a conference in 2018. And she was like, I don't think Steve's ever been to a conference like this before, but we thought maybe there's a few people like him studying the neurocircuitry of interoception. And it was pretty eye-opening, she felt, that there's this disconnect between clinical research and basic research. So Liberalis didn't actually start out to study interoception. His research has helped actually fill a gap in the understanding that Chen already identified. He was trying to figure out how to map the cell types that make up the vagus nerve, which is a major brain-body communication highway. And the vagus nerve contains all the sensory neurons that innervate most of our vital organs, like the heart, lung, intestines, and stomach. And the researchers had suspected for a long time that the vagus nerve plays a key role in brain-body communication, but really didn't know much about how else that it worked. So Liberalis and his colleagues, they focused on the sensory neurons in the vagus nerves of mice. And they used the single-cell RNA sequencing, and they were analyzing the gene expression of thousands of individual neurons to learn about the role each of them played. And they discovered about 36 types of vagal neurons, each of which has a distinct molecular property and perceives specific types of information. And the mechanoreceptors that sense stomach stretching are only one example where this happens. Other types control breathing and coughing, detect blood pressure, oxygen changes, or sense when the airway is closing to induce gasping. And they detect a wide array of stimuli that relay up to the brain. So a lot of this is happening when I'm unconscious. All of a sudden, we know we're frustrated, we're pissed off, we're angry, we're mad, we're scared, we're anxious, we're happy. All of those things are happening, and it's all because of the stimuli being received in from the body. And he says, liberalists said changing physiology, evoking perceptions like the state of fullness, and influencing the mood. So after he spent a long time deciphering all of these neurons in the vagus, they traced where those signals travel. And they employed a technique called, and this is very techy, 2-photon calcium imaging, which uses fluorescent molecules to illuminate neurons as they activate. Does that make sense? So they injected or involved fluorescent molecules so they could see as the neurons were traveling, that's how they got activated. And it allowed the researchers to see how are organs transmitting messages from the vagus nerve to the brain. And I really, I found this article super interesting because a lot of the meditation and the calming that we do is all around the parasympathetic system, the vagus nerve, calming all that down, and a lot of focus on the vagus nerve, which is really important if you suffer from things like anxiety, or if you have ADHD and you're very distracted and it's hard to get back to center and you're trying to get to flow to get some work done. All of those things play a role. And what they found, this is Liberalist and his colleagues, that the first important stop for vagus signals is the brainstem, and especially the nucleus of the solitary tract. Now, that's a very complicated word and phrase, but they call it NST. And that is located at the base of the skull. The cell bodies of the vagus sensory neurons are intermingled, but as their signal transmitting axons move into the NST, they form what Liberalist calls a remarkable map of internal organs. How fascinating is that? So from there, the signals can flow to the periobrachial nucleus, which sorts through all of those inputs, along with information from the spinal cord and then some of the external senses. So everything I was talking about last week when I said you're getting all this internal stimuli from your 5 senses that is feeding through your limbic brain first, and you're having this gut reaction to things, this is the research behind it. The signals can also travel to higher brain regions involved in emotion, memory, and decision making, but they don't always do this, which may be why not all interoceptive signals reach conscious awareness. Some are just passively reporting what is being sensed, so you don't even realize it's just kind of in the background. It's the hum going on in the background. And this is coming from Mark Adderman, an HMS professor of medicine and of neurobiology at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center. So it wouldn't really be efficient, in his words, to have every signal rising to the front of our minds. But when something happens that makes you feel off, those are the moments when you shift your attention from the outside world to what's going on inside. And he says that's one of the next frontiers of understanding interoception at a mechanistic level. So, once these signals make it to the higher levels of the brain, they can cause a vague feeling that something's wrong. Perhaps it's manifesting as a bad mood, or you just don't feel well, or you're in the dumps, I got up on the wrong side of the bed kind of a thing. Or they can trigger more specific feelings that you really have to do something about, like, my bladder's full, or my stomach's empty. And the one brain region in particular that seems to activate when people consciously attend to their own interoceptive states, the insula, or insular cortex. Now, in the 50s, there was a neurosurgeon named Wilder Penfield, and he discovered that electrical stimulation of this so-called hidden cortex, called curious internal sensations, in his patients, such as an upset stomach or a pang of fear. That's when he figured all that out. And around that same time, other researchers found that the insula responded to stimulation of the vagus nerve. So, the body basically has a fast lane highway to the insular cortex. The insula appears to track the internal sensations that accompany important experiences. And Adderman and his colleagues used a technique called optogenics, and they were exploring the link between interoception, food intake, and insula in mice. So that involved adding, again, a fluorescent sensor to the mice's insular cortex neurons so researchers could watch the neural activity. And over several years, they discovered neurons in the insula that exhibit specific patterns linked to states of fullness, hunger, thirst, or any other interoceptive sensations. And they also found something that took them by surprise. Simply showing a mouse a photo, a picture of food or water was enough to trigger specific changes in the neural activity patterns in the insula. So, for example, if a thirsty mouse saw a picture of a drop of water, the neurons in its insular cortex temporarily adopted the pattern associated with being quenched before quickly returning to the pattern indicating thirst. So you can begin to see how your mind and your vagus nerve, all of that is interrelated, but it is following a very specific path. So Adderman, he suspects that this is all about the function of the insula and of interoception more broadly. And that is to orchestrate our behavior by giving us a preview of how our bodies will feel if we make certain decisions. So if you see an apple and the insula gives you a glimpse of what you feel when you eat it, that will depend on how hungry you are. If you see a dish that once made you sick, then the nausea returns for just a split second. Or you stumble upon a bear while hiking and your heart rate increases, your breathing quickens and your palms sweat. The next time you walk close to that same spot, you begin to feel the same visceral sensations you began to feel. And you feel them again and you decide to take a different route. So this brings about a new mind-body paradigm. And these findings are suggesting that the interoception is not a one-way street. A very traditional definition used to be that when it comes from the body and ends in the brain. But now we know that the brain can go back and regulate signals and organs. It's a loop. And how do you do that? You do it through pause practice. When it comes to sensations of hunger, for example, the brain is not passively serving as a bean counter that measures how many calories a food gives us after we digest it. It's actually making preemptive changes. Your brain sends signals that make you feel full well before you've digested your food so you don't overeat. And if you can recognize the feedback loop between the brain and body, that means it opens up a whole new possibilities for understanding disease. And that's when Chin says there's evidence that some of these conditions that we think of as disorders, like depression and Alzheimer's, could originate outside the brain, and that there are likely peripheral ailments, like nausea, hypertension, and urinary incontinence that sometimes originate in the brain. That's what is really intriguing about interoception. And if we can figure out all of the connections between body and brain, that could help us figure out what the best treatment paradigms are. So they're all showing that the concept of interoception is much more nuanced than looking at how a person performs a task like counting heartbeats. It's more about the interruptions or hypersensitivities are possible in any of the receptors, and the pathways that are sending the messages from the outside extremities of the body, as well as the higher brain regions where those signals can travel. So if the pathways that were found in the mice share similarities with those in humans, dialing them up or down could offer tremendous therapeutic potential. So imagine treating nausea or pain by dialing down pathways relating to feelings of illness, developing medications for eating disorders or obesity that target sensory receptors in the gut, or treating panic disorder by targeting an insula that's in overdrive. In animals, we can test out medications that might actually help to turn up and down these dials. And so they're all saying that this recent research, and this was in June of 2024, so this is only a year and a half old, but they're thinking that there's a lot of similarities between mice and humans in this interoception. But it's going to require a change in focus. We're trying to learn how studying ourselves and how our mind is connected to our body is a very integrated and comprehensive process. And so as we begin to learn more about this, it becomes more and more obvious that as we get all of this stimuli coming through, that if we start to pay attention to our feelings and not our emotions, that we maybe can stop some of this gut reaction that is happening when we explode in rage, lash out in anger, say things we wish we hadn't, all of a sudden become anxious or fearful. We are, instead of saying, I'm scared, I'm mad, I'm upset, and I need to do something about it, instead say, I'm feeling something it's my stomach. I feel tension in my shoulders. Start describing where you feel this in your body, and it will be strides ahead of getting that pause in place, because you're noticing, my skin is tingling, I'm nervous. Where do I feel that in my body? I'm anxious. I don't want to go out and be with my friends tonight. I feel too depressed. You may have a chemical imbalance that does need to be treated. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor of any kind. I'm just sitting here as an executive coach dealing with my own stuff and realizing when I get bummed out, if I think about, where am I feeling that in my body? Let's think about, I'm feeling sad. Maybe it's that I'm feeling it in my heart. I'm feeling a need to let something out. I'm resurrecting old memories. I'm replaying old tapes. And when I replay those old tapes, where do I feel it in my body? I think for myself, if I replay old memories that end up bringing back old emotions, you end up reliving some of those things. And as you relive them, your body goes back through that same physiological feelings of sadness. You're feeling droopy. My stomach gets tight. I can feel it in my back and in my solar plexus. And so feeling you're feeling around mentally through your body of what is going on, so that I can then address that and getting back out in public if that's what I really wanted to do, getting back to my goals, maybe calming my anxiety, maybe calming the frantic feeling I have when I especially go through this, when I realize I have too much on my plate and I'm scared and I'm nervous, I'm not going to get it all done. And it's like my heart is racing and I feel this tightness in my chest and there's a panic. Well, what does panic feel like in your body? Maybe you have alexithymia and you don't really know what that emotion is, but you can tap into this interoception and just start describing, I'm feeling tightness. I'm feeling a lump in my stomach. What is that lump about? And focus on the feelings and managing through the feelings in your body and how your body is reacting versus focusing on, I'm just too anxious, I'm just too scared, because it makes you feel like it makes me feel like I can't do anything about it. And I start panting and breathing and I can't get myself calmed down and I end up having a panic attack. Like, can I get ahead of that? Can I use this interoception ability and tune in sooner? What does that look like if you're practicing your pauses and you're getting ahead of these gut reactions? How can you help yourself, maybe through meditation, maybe if you're just sitting quietly, maybe you're praying, if that's your faith. So for me, it would be to sit and meditate. And I have noticed that when I meditate and I'm feeling my breathing, so many times I've been so frustrated with my meditation practice, and they keep saying, pay attention to your breath, the in and the out, and breathe in for 4 and out for 4. And if you have thoughts, just think of them like clouds in the sky and just let them go on by. That didn't really work for me. But I am noticing now what is working is when I pay attention to how my lungs feel expanding. And then I feel them contracting, and I'm letting that breath out. And are my shoulders getting tense? Can I relax my shoulders? And I'm feeling, how do my lungs feel? How does my rib cage feel? How does my back feel? When I'm paying attention to my breath in that way of feeling and getting in touch with my body, I can tell my interoception is increasing. And it helps me stay in the meditation practice, and it helps me still my mind. And I don't know if that's helpful for you, but I'm noticing more and more about those things. And this study, as they began to understand more about the vagus nerve, and they understand more about the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system and how all of that works together as well, I think we're going to find better opportunities for us to stay connected to our body, which is hard because when I was growing up as a kid, my dad was very much against feelings and emotions. He only cared about facts and believed that that was the only way that you could relate to people was through facts. And as I'm getting older, and he's long since been gone, I now am getting back in touch with my emotions, but now my feelings. And as I am paying attention to how my body feels, it's getting a little better. But this is still new for me. And so I invite all of you to spend some time in pause practice, noticing how your body feels, getting in touch with how do my shoulders, how's my back, how am I sitting, what is my posture like, and checking in with your body on a regular basis. I know I did a lot of that when I was ultra running. I was always checking in, like, does that feel like an injury? Does that feel like it's just a overuse? Like, what is going on with my body? Am I hungry? Am I feeling nauseous? All of those things were going on in my mind as I was running all those miles. But then when I'm not running, I sort of have stopped doing some of that as well in my day-to-day. So think about that. Think about interoception for you. Think about pause practice. And I would like to spend more time on this subject, especially as I move towards my Patreon growth. We might do more meditation within that, as if you're a member of a tier that provides the meditation piece. I do think it's a super valuable facet. I know a lot of Buddhist practices are all about getting back into your body, coming back in, and not be so much in your head and up in the ethers with your thoughts. So I invite you to try and to think about like what that would mean for you if you could be in touch with your body. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope it gave you some things to think about how to get back in touch with who you are as a human body, and that maybe you'll share this with somebody. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. My Patreon will be launching at the first of the year, fully packed with all of my old videos. It's already has all of my podcasts, so if you'd like to listen, if you're on a place where you have to listen to commercials, you can subscribe and get all of my podcasts commercial free. And share and subscribe and spread the word. And I wish peace for everybody this time of year. Things are a little crazy in the world right now, and I hug those that you love and keep them close. And until next episode, everybody be safe and be kind.